Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
This hurricane season has obviously been particularly intense, and it has arrived just at the time of a US president who's sceptical of climate change. Do Harvey and Irma change anything? Should they change anything? I'm joined by the Republican mayor of Miami, Thomas Regalado, and by Myron Ebel, who headed up Donald Trump's Environmental Protection Agency transition team. A very good evening to you both. Mayor, if I could just start with you and ask whether you're feeling a sense of relief at the moment or a sense of loss at the devastation, but at the very least we don't know of any lives lost in Miami itself at the moment.
Well, actually, I believe we're blessed. In Miami, we were told that we could expect a direct hit. All the models pointed to the city of Miami. Personally, I really was afraid because we prepare for this every single year, and yet I knew that we were not prepared for this magnitude. But when we were hit on a lateral basis, we felt damage, and the most important thing is that we have experienced several things that are different than the past hurricanes. Look, I lived my life, all my life here in the city of Miami. As a teenager, as a child, I went through hurricanes in the 60s. I was here when Andrew came, so I know that nature can bring storms. But this year has been very different, and the year before for that matter. This year, we for the first time ever, we had 3 hurricanes at the same time moving in the Atlantic and the Caribbean basin. And we were told by the scientists, well, it's something that never happened before. So, but I will tell you something, here in Miami, we had never had a storm surge in terms, even with Andrew. Because we are kind of a close bay.
Mayor, you put a lot of that down to climate change. Let me put that point to Myron Ebel, because a lot of people, I think, will have the reaction that says something is happening, something different is happening, and surely that is telling you that climate change is bearing down upon us all now.
The United States has not had a major hurricane landfall in the United States for nearly 12 years until Harvey did last month. So I don't think you can say climate change is suddenly responsible for 1 year's hurricane activity. The fact is we've been in a low phase of hurricane activity, and we may now, of course, this may be a sign that we're entering the higher phase. And Mayor Regalado and others down there will have to get used to it and prepare for it. And I would say the mayor his policies are correct. You know, he is pushing for major new spending to improve the infrastructure in Miami to deal with storms. I think the rhetoric is wrong, but I think I congratulate him on the policy.
Myron, do you think the fact that you've had 2 storms, you don't believe it in any way alters the evidence? You're not a great believer in climate change, let's face it. Do you believe it's going to change the debate on climate change? That whatever you believe, lots of people are going to look at this and be very scared and say, heck, we should do something about it.
I think it very well could over the short term. I don't think it has much long-term impact in our public debate. Americans deal with disasters and have been doing so for the entire history of the country, and after the disaster is over, we move on. But I think in the short term, look, the environmental pressure groups and the politicians will try to take advantage of this and whoop it up and say this is one of those portents, biblical portents of impending doom. But in fact, of course, you know, in 1900, Galveston, Texas was flattened by a hurricane, and nobody had thought up climate change at that time to blame it on.
Mayor, do you think this season is changing the climate change debate in the United States, putting pressure on Donald Trump, for example, to rethink his decision to pull out of Paris?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, Mayor, yeah. Regalado.
Well, let me tell you something. I think that we're doing the right thing by preparing for the storms. I think that, for instance, we have before the voters in the city of Miami a referendum to borrow about $200 million to fight sea level rise and flooding in the city of Miami. Those are policies, but our policies because things have changed. And I'm not about rhetoric. I'm not important to change the national debate on climate change. I'm just telling you guys and everyone that listens that I have grown in this city since I was 10 years old. I'm very old now. I've seen it all. And what I've seen now and what I see from my office in the middle of the bay that we have City Hall there, it's a different scenario in terms of the water. I will tell you for a fact that the storm surge that we have yesterday was different than any other
I'm
we have seen.
In
fact,
Mayor Regalado, what is your message for Donald Trump then? Because if there's this much climate change locked in now, if everything's changed, you better just build a stronger city because you're going to be getting these things every year on that view.
Well, my message to President Trump, respectfully, is he is a business person. He understands about jobs and money. And let me tell you something. Here in South Florida, we have the most exposed assets. If we don't get help, or if we don't do it by ourselves, to do the seawalls higher, to have pocket parks to drain, to have better and bigger pumps, to have different things to help alleviate what we know, what I know as mayor for 8 years, is something different. There's going to be a problem in Miami. And when you lose billions and billions of dollars, your conversation in London and in Washington will not be about Miami being flooded. It would be about the insurance companies leaving the state of Florida, or for that matter, going bankrupt in the United States. We've seen what is happening in Texas, and you don't want another Texas in the city of Miami.
Okay. Very briefly, Myron Ebel, you know Donald Trump. Do you think he will be receptive to a new public pressure on these kinds of issues?
Oh, I hope not, but I can't tell you which way he may fall in terms of the public debate. I know that sea level rise is a threat to Florida, but that comes from both rising sea levels and also subsidence of the ground. And unless the next ice age starts in the next 1,000 years, Florida, a lot more of Florida will be underwater unless they build levees, because sea levels have been going up since the end of the last ice age 12,000 years ago.
Mayor Regalado, thank you both very much indeed. Thanks. Thank you.